What's up? What's up? What's up? This is Rap Sheet Hollywood. We bring you the livest and the freshest commentary in Hollywood, but of course, with a hip hop flair. I'm your host, the incomparable Pook Diesel, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different. A lot of you know me as, the host of the Rap Sheet Hollywood show, but of course, my daytime job is television and film producer. And we have an amazing show that's coming out Tuesday, March 21st on CNBC at 10 p.m. is the amazing, this is the first time Law and Order has actually done a true crime series. So I was privileged to work on that and to produce a few of the episodes. And so we're going to talk about that today. So make sure you guys tune in for that on Tuesday. And then there's a re-airing on Saturday. Saturday the 26th on the Oxygen Network. So you guys got to tune in. This is the first time that we are talking about it. I'm going to talk about my experiences as a producer. And the first case that we're going to talk about is the Rodney Rudin case out of Las Vegas. And today, joining me is someone that I interviewed for the show, very great personality, a person who really kind of knew everybody involved. I want you guys to welcome JB Cassell. How are you, JB?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thank you so much for being here with us. Let's dig right into it. You know, people who are true crime fanatics, like they watch the shows and they watch them over and over. It's really just important for them to be able to know some of the details, know some of the behind the scenes. Unfortunately, obviously, there was a murder that took place in this situation. So we are always, sad about that. But there's also things that we can learn from some of these cases. And I'm always interested in being able to kind of, break down what did happen. In this case, Rodney Rudin lost his life. He was murdered. And I think that, that alone is a sad thing. But in the case, it was really interesting how it broke down. Let me just start with you, JB. What was your connection to the Rodney Rudin case? How were you attached?
Well, I knew both of them. I knew Ron as a real estate agent and a businessman, and Margaret as she had gotten her real estate license and was working in the business. And then she decided to get into the antique business. But Ron had been around Las Vegas since about the 60s. And as a matter of fact, my aunt, who's deceased now, but she moved to Las Vegas in the 60s and she bought a home and had some professional dealings with him.
So if you had to describe what Rodney Rudin was like, what his character was like, we hear stories about the big black cowboy hat, the big cars that he would drive, him kind of being a staple in the Las Vegas area. Talk a little bit about what Ron was like.
Okay, well, Ron, by most people's standard, he was a nice looking man. He's tall, maybe kind of slim or average size, whatever. He had like that gray fox hair that he kept, was perfectly coiffured. And but in my opinion, he's a shady character. I think he really wanted to be a mafioso, but he wasn't Italian. He couldn't get in the inside. So he worked around the outside with a lot of the mafiosos. They work with people, when they have to get land deals done, mortgages, that type of business, and laundering some money. Take this dirty money, run it through this deal, clean it up, and he gets a percentage of it. And so he was a shady character.
So, some of these cases really have multiple layers, and this one definitely does with Ron. And, being in Las Vegas, we all know the history of the mafia in Las Vegas and, them being there many years. And you actually even told me some stories about, some of, the history of you being there and what you kind of observed, over time being in there. And, we love our law enforcement, but we also know that, sometimes, law enforcement can be, influenced by all the money that's there as well. in this particular case, it really, as I was doing my research and really trying to figure out, because his wife Margaret was accused of the murder, and she obviously went to trial for the murder. What was Margaret like? Tell us a little bit about Margaret.
Well, Margaret comes off as a Southern belle, refined, elegant, always dressed to the nines, coiffured, manicured, shopped at the best stores. She was big on Neiman Marcus and wore, expensive clothes. And she was a nice looking woman. She was really attractive in her younger days. And well, she married 5 times. So she was kind of like, a magnet, but, for wealthier men, or, that was her standard. She wasn't going to be with a broke dude. Let's put it like that.
Okay. Now that was another interesting factor, that not only Margaret, but also Ron as well, were both on this was their 5th marriage when they got together. And so, excuse me, that kind of says a little bit when on its own, right? You're both on your 5th marriage. She likes wealthy men. He likes the ladies, and kind of living a little bit of that lifestyle, in Las Vegas. You talked about, there being some, kind of mafioso kind of ties just in the area, living in Las Vegas. If you're a businessman, there's all these kind of, ancillary kind of conditions. When did you first notice that something is going wrong? Like, when did you first find out, or you hear that Ron was missing?
Well, it was all over the television. I wasn't so much on the inner circle where I got the calls that, hey, do you know where Ron is? Or, Ron's missing, or anything like that. Showed up on television. And so that I found out like everyone else in Las Vegas, pretty much. I just heard it on the news.
Yeah. So, I mean, here is Ron, a businessman. There was talks about him wanting to do more land deals and to develop different parts of Las Vegas, even in the outskirts of Las Vegas. And so, one of the things that really struck me about this case, his car is found, and inside the car there are multiple there's multiple footprints in the car, and he always kept his car, in pristine condition, is always clean. But yet it was found outside of let's just say a night, a frequented bar of sorts where young ladies would dance. So
a strip joint. It was the crazy horse too, a strip joint. Yeah.
A strip joint.
And he was known as a church-going religious. Well, that was his persona. That was part of his reputation. He belonged to Central Christian, and it has a really big following. And that was good for business. There's a lot of families, a lot of people buying, selling homes, and he would do that. He wasn't the type of guy to hang out in the Crazy Horse and be trying to date a stripper, or I don't know that maybe he wouldn't have had an affair with one, but that wasn't his MO to hang out there.
So how odd was that then for his car to be found there? And like we said, there was multiple footprints in there. That kind of spells, a little bit of the mafioso kind of stuff that we talk about.
Well, that spoke volumes to me right away. The minute I heard that, I knew he was involved in the Mount Charleston deal. Mount Charleston was hot back then. A lot of people from Vegas were having like second homes and cabins. Mount Charleston Lodge was really popular. The hotel was popular. It was a hot commodity. And he had a good idea about, he knew that was the trend. And he saw the opportunity to make quite a bit of money. He couldn't finance it himself. They got what they call soft money and hard money. If you can't go to the bank, and I think there was a man named Pat Thomas back in the day who was the president of Valley Bank. And he did a lot of deals. He was kind of like the go-to guy. But if you couldn't get regular loan, and you had to go for hard money. You had to go to, somebody who had stacks of cash, but usually the interest on it was pretty high, or these guys want a piece of the deal, or both, a little bit on each end.
Right.
So in order for him to be able to get that on, he had to come up with several millions of dollars. And I don't think he was that liquid. I think, he had properties and a business and some stuff, but just to cough up, couple $3 million, just cash, boom, that would be difficult for a lot of people.
So one of the reasons why this case is really interesting is because you do have that dynamic of there's some mafioso stuff going on, but then between Margaret and also Ron themselves, they started out great, but then we soon started to find out there was some infidelity going on. There was some dating. There was actually even some eavesdropping and wiretapping of his office going on. JB, talk a little bit about that relationship between Margaret and Ron.
Well, as soon as she married him, she didn't realize he had a drinking problem. And with the drinking problem comes a temper. And so they clashed. And even a little bit of abuse. Yeah, I think he slapped her, or he was going to try to control her. And Margaret's not the type of person that you're going to control. She might go along to get along for a little while, but then those wheels are turning as to, okay, how am I going to get out of this? What's my next move going to be? What are we going to do here? And that was kind of what was happening. They were on and off. And you would think by the time that they were each on their fifth marriage and they had matured, that they would have grown out of, or he would have grown out of some of his run-ins around and cheating and everything. And they could have, settled down and been okay. However, that wasn't it. That's not what happened. And she wanted that antique shop, and he opened it up and gave it to her. But that was still a way of controlling her, keeping her close. It was right next to his office, kept her in the same strip mall, had it where he could keep an eye on her. She was trying to get money together the whole time because she just didn't have carte blanche to his fortune. He was tight. Mm. And so that, when you start arguing over money, it usually doesn't end up well. Most marriages break up more behind infidelity and money than anything else. Those are probably the two biggest reasons why people separate.
JB, I love it that you're a straight shooter. You call it as you see it. And that's one of the things that I really do just appreciate about you, is that you call it like you see it. What was your experience, actually filming for the show? This is a Dick Wolf show, so it's a pretty big deal. This is the first time that Law and Order and that moniker is doing a true crime show. I thought that, producing this episode, you had just the character within you that we had to have you, on camera, because no one tells it like you tell it, and, honestly, when you interviewing a lot of people, some people, they kind of, they tiptoe around it, you kind of call it like you see it. What was your experience like, filming for this show, Blood and Money? What was your thoughts?
Well, I'm very excited about this. I can't wait for it to air. I hope a lot of people tune in, because it's going to have a lot of good information. It's just like, if you like mob movies and if you like things in old Vegas, this is going to be right up your alley. It was filmed in a great location. The crew you have are fabulous. We had a good time. I truly enjoyed every bit of it. And I've gone along with Margaret, through the 20 years that she was locked up, right up to the time they vacated her sentence. And now that she's moved on. And I hope that I hope that something good happens for her so she can live out the rest of her life in some peace. And you know, and you know, at 79 years old, we're not promised tomorrow. None of us are. But she's, like they say, a little long in the tooth at this time. You know?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not going to sugarcoat anything, but you know, 79 years. Unfortunately, you know, that is really a shame. I have a little bit of hard feelings towards the state of Nevada because they stole 20 years of her life. If they had done a little more investigation, and if they hadn't have been afraid of stepping on some toes or getting into the mob, you know, it's like you're going to go to a part of town and harass a lot of people that's not going to fight back. Go over there to the part of town that's got the guns that's going to shoot back at you when you shoot at them. You know, people tiptoe around a lot of stuff. You know, I think most police officers, they start out with a good heart and they want to be champions. They want to right the wrongs. They want to be a crusade for good and everything. But, you know, when you get 10 years into a job and you see that no matter what you do, things don't change. The system doesn't change. It's just a revolving door for the same people sometimes. And you just doing, it's like what the definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome. And then what comes to my mind is if you can't beat them, join them. If Joe Blow over here is getting 20, 30 grand under the table, his life is better. He's got the Harley, the better house. His kids are wearing the better clothes or whatever it might be. And you're over here trying to do the right thing and struggling maybe. Well, after a while, you get tired of looking at that. So I think there was quite a few cops that they could grease the wheel. They could get a little something under the table or trade a deal for a deal. That's just like a lot of these attorneys. They get in court and they act like they hate each other and they go at each other. And then the next thing you do, go out here to one of these steakhouses or one of these places and they're having dinner and cocktails, or they're on the golf course and they're saying, okay, I'll give you this case, but then I got to have this case, because they've got to perpetuate a paycheck and everybody's got to make a living. So that's what they do. They trade off these cases. And I don't believe Margaret killed Rod. So there's still a murderer out there. And
Yeah,
we might never.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish that.
Well, we might not ever know. Now, my theory was that somebody would either get old enough or their kids would grow up enough to say, hey, you know what? I know who actually did that. Because in the past, that has happened. You get deathbed confessions. You get a grown son who realizes his dad was the hit man or was the one, you know, that was doing a whole lot of stuff. I really thought something would come about, and it might still. But I don't know that Margaret will be alive to enjoy it when it does come around.
Yeah, one of the things, and once again, I appreciate you, calling it, like you do, because you've been around it, you're in the area, what's going on locally, the climate, where there's corruption, where there's, mafioso involvement. When Margaret first went to trial, or shortly after, she actually got offered a deal, which she wouldn't have had to go 20 years if she would have confessed. But she stood firm and said that she did not commit this murder. What was your thoughts on Margaret standing tall?
She not only got offered once, they gave her 3 times a plea deal, if I'm not mistaken. And she had been in there maybe like 5 years. And they told her, if you'll just change your plea, we'll do this time served, you're out of here. And it might not have even been 5 years. It might have only been like 2 or 3. But she sure would have been gone before 5 years. And she told him, she says, I'm not going to say I'm guilty to something that I'm not. And I'm sure that's her faith. She has a lot of faith. She's a Catholic, or she practiced being Catholic while she was in prison, and I think she is still Catholic. And I think she, she stood on her faith that that something would happen.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, you talk to different people, and, everyone has a different opinion, right? With the saying about opinions, how everyone has one. Some people really do believe that she had something to do with Ron's disappearance. Others, don't. They just think that it was a totally different direction. Even how some of the evidence was found, people have been able to say that it was kind of shaky how that kind of all transpired. And so, looking at this whole case in its totality, what do you take away from this? There's always lessons to be learned, right? From every case and every story. When you think about this particular case with Ron and Margaret, what do you say are some of the lessons to be learned from this, JB?
Be careful who you associate with, because I'm just almost 100% confident the mob killed Ron. You don't have 4 sets of muddy footprints. I can almost see a scenario in my head if I was going to write a book about this myself. Mm-hmm. They called him, hey, we need to talk about this money. Meet us at Crazy Horse. 3 mafioso dudes get in the Cadillac with him. They drive up to Mount Charleston. They stomp around in the land, in the mud. They get their feet dirty. They talk to him. Hey, we want our money. This deal's not going in the right direction. We can't agree on this or that or whatever it might be. And I don't know if maybe they knocked him out up there, or maybe shot him and either put him in the trunk or whatever. Then they drove out to Lake Mead. So, and that's where they dumped his body and did what they did. Because he would have never had 3 or 4 sets of muddy prints. So that they got up there and they got into an altercation over Mount Charleston, and that's what happened.
So, and my only question back, just to prod your thoughts is, why then would the mob then dispose of his vehicle right there at their own establishment when they're known to be frequenting, the Crazy Horse? It's kind of known to be a, kind of mob hangout. That's the only thing that, I would ask you, why then would the car be found right then and there, which would obviously point the finger at the mob?
You know what? I think at that point, there's so many people in and out of that place, and it was just, you could pick and choose. So why not leave it there? It's not like they were scared. It's not like maybe they didn't have the police in their pocket and they wasn't going to worry about it. Is it better to take something to a crowded place, or to be isolated? Yeah, they weren't scared to leave it there. They backed it in so you couldn't read the license plate for a while, but then they just walked back on in and probably had a cocktail and told the boss, hey, it's handled. And that's what it is. Because even the guy who owned the Crazy Horse too, he had a reputation. He ended up being indicted for some stuff, and they ended up shutting that place down. The feds went in, and so that was a haunt for all that.
Well, I just want to say, JB, thank you for talking with us today. These cases, there's so much to be learned from these cases. And, looking at the story of Ron and Margaret, you knew both of them personally. You still were in contact with Margaret even after she served 20 years and came home maintaining her innocence, never once settling for any pleas. It's just it's one of those cases that you see we're still talking about it to this day, and it definitely made for, as I was using it and interviewing different people, I was like, wow, this case just continues to have just more and more layers, even to the point where her case was actually vacated, and she was at that point in time not exonerated, but she was, after she had served all her time, it was kind of proven that she didn't necessarily commit the murder. So that's pretty crazy. And we had great attorney work. I know you're really good friends with her former attorney, and you guys have kind of talked, and we have you on the show. Yeah, when you think about everything in its totality, what would you say at the end of the day is, your thoughts? And then tell us a little bit about, what do you got going on now? What are you doing these days? And, how can people find out more about you, JB?
Well, thank you very much. Well, I tell you what, I can't sing Greg enough praises, because he was someone who went online, did his own investigation, believed in her innocence, and contacted her and asked her, "Can I represent you?" She didn't even know he existed, and he's not a criminal attorney.
So we got to shout out Greg Mullinex. Greg was the attorney.
From Fresno.
From Fresno, heard about her case online, stepped forward and really wanted to help her, because he really felt that she was being wronged in this case. And years after, all of the work that took place, years later, they were able to get her case vacated. So we got to give, props to Greg. Hopefully I'll meet with him a little later.
Yeah, he knew she was getting the shaft. And, he says it just was not right. He just knew. He read all of it. It just was not right. And he stepped up, and it was a long, hard fight. But he stayed with her till he got it done. So I tell you what, I have so much respect for him. You don't find many lawyers, and he did it pro bono for free.
Wow.
So that says a lot about him. That speaks volumes to his character, and he's a really good dude. And if anything ever happened to me, I'd sure want him in my corner.
Well, look, we want everyone to tune in. I think it's going to be a very, interesting, fascinating episode. Like I said, it's airing on Tuesday, March 21st at 10 p.m. on CNBC. Then it's re-airing on the Oxygen Network this Saturday, the 26th at 9 p.m. You guys definitely have to tune in to kind of check it out. The story is, it's a wild one. We'll take you on a ride for sure. It's also
and Paul,
go ahead.
real quick. I know you got to wrap this up probably. The latest thing I'm working on is a young man who's in Texas, who's been in prison now for going on about 15 years. He was so over prosecuted behind a contest. The district attorney was putting on a contest for these judges in Montgomery County outside of Houston, Conroe, Texas, where it was a contest for the judges who would give out the most life sentences, that they would get a gold coin. Wow. And it's like the gold coin of death. And the percentage of life sentences jumped from about 8% to 32%. There was a man given a life sentence for shoplifting. There was a man given a life sentence for just a small amount of drugs. Rodney was given a life sentence plus 40 years, and he was the passenger in a car, and a confidential informant set him up. This young man has no business being in prison. We got a Facebook page, Rodney Young Anderson versus the state of Texas. You can go on Facebook, look it up, read the articles. I'm trying to get a few people and a little power behind this thing, because Rodney's life matters. Mm-hmm. And he's been in there 15 years, and we have gone to the Texas Criminal Court of Appeals. We're down to the last try to get him a new trial. Man, they have fought us every step of the way. And it's a real shame, because what happens is, even if he gets a new trial, he has to go back to the judge that sentenced him, that got the gold coin for giving him the life sentence. Where's the justice in this? It's crazy. And if you read the articles, and if you look it up, we've made a manuscript. I've got a story. I'm hoping maybe I can get Hulu, Netflix, Law and Order, somebody interested. It's a true story. It's real. We've interviewed, had private investigators. This is a travesty, and this needs to be corrected. And his parents have stuck by him and paid a high-priced appellate attorney in San Antonio, and the money that they have spent, it's unbelievable, and we still can't get him out.
Well, JB, we definitely want to support you on this video here. I'll put a link on here so that people can be able to find out more information. His Rodney Young was his name, the gentleman's
Rodney
name?
Young Anderson.
Rodney Young Anderson.
Versus the state of Texas.
We want to be able to find out, because there's so much of injustice that's going on, but we know the power of speaking things into existence, documentaries, things of that sort, so we can get justice wherever we feel that justice is not being found. So thank you for your work on that, and we'll continue to support you on that. JB, how can people get in contact with you? What is some of your social media stuff, Facebook or Instagram, or Twitter? What are some of the things? How can people get in contact with you?
Well, it's Joe Cassell. If you go and just look Joe Cassell up on Facebook, and then I am on Twitter and Instagram. And to be honest with you, I just can't quote the address right off the top of my head, but I'm not hard to find.
Okay, and that's Joe Cassell, JoeCassell.
That's correct. And then I will answer everybody, and I'm trying to get up to do a podcast. I'm working with the local writer here in Las Vegas, Tim Molyneux. He goes back from he travels back and forth from LA to Vegas, and he goes wherever the work is. He's out there, he's a writer, and we've written this story, and we're working with him. And if I can get this podcast going, maybe we can help a lot of people transition from prison to the so-called free world where nothing is for free.
Yeah.
And make a difference. And, there's a lot of people locked up that don't need to be.
Well, JB, Joe, I really appreciate you talking with us today. We're friends here. We're at Rap Sheet Hollywood. Anything we can do to help, we want to promote and get it out there. Thank you for talking with us. The show, once again, is called Blood and Money. It's Law and Order's first rendition of true crime. And once again, Tuesday on CNBC at 10 p.m. And then once again, re-airing on Oxygen Network Saturday, March 26th at 9 p.m. You guys stay tuned. JB, any last thoughts? Any last things you want to say?
You know what? Thank you so much. I enjoyed working with you. It's been a pleasure. God bless. And everybody jump on board and read this thing and take a ride with us, and let's see what we can uncover.
And there it is there. We thank you so much. And guess what? We are out.